Someone who saw the Marx generator at the Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago. I think this is many years back, where they would split 2x4s with lightning, sending a huge thunderclap through the museum. Where do Marx and Cockcroft-Walton generators fit into this work? Can you tell us what those are, and are they a similar thing or something that gets there by a different technology?
Marx generators can generate millions of volts, and if you load them up with capacitance, they'll split 2x4s. A Cockcroft-Walton generator is a little bit different. A Marx generator works by charging a bunch of capacitors in parallel, and then you have some means to suddenly connect them in series, and they form a high voltage. Whereas a Cockcroft-Walton, you're using diodes arranged in a zigzag all the way up the capacitors, and it acts like a bucket brigade, and it just shuttles charge all the way to the top. And over some amount of time, it charges up to full voltage. Both of these schemes can make millions of volts. However, I want to make 8 million volts, but I have to do it cheaply. A Marx generator per volt costs way more than a Tesla coil, because if you make the Tesla coil right, it's mostly air. It's just a winding that does this. Whereas the Marx bank has all these capacitors all the way up there, so it's a structure that holds a lot of weight, and that structure also has to be a good insulator. Very expensive.
Is that what that structure, back to Russia, there was that structure that Russia built that looked like a whole series of diodes going up in, and I think you talked about it at one point when we were first talking about the stock, that it ended up being too close to some grounding source?
The big white tower?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a Marx generator. It was a bunch of capacitors. I think that one had 90 or 100 stages in series. And then the spark gaps were all lined up through the center. If you get up in there and look at it, it looks really cool because there's just this vanishing point of spark gaps. And they're all lined up in series because when the first one flashes, they follow in a chain reaction. The ultraviolet light from one of them lands on the electrodes of the other and actually helps break it down.
And you also mentioned about turning off lightning, which I thought was interesting. I was just out at the clock site where we're building the clock, and we have a big, huge crane tower at the top that's attached to all of us humans effectively because we're all on the crane platform. And whenever there was lightning within 5 miles, we had to stop working. And obviously, lightning causes destruction around the world on some level, and fires, forest fires, for better or worse, depending on where you are. What do you think that there's a plausible scenario for being able to control lightning on that level?
I think it's worth looking at because, as I mentioned, lightning uses this gain mechanism. It doesn't have enough field to generate lightning to start, but this relativistic electron avalanche has a net gain. And usually something like that has gain, it's pretty easy to wreck it. And all you have to do is wreck it, to wreck its gain, to stop the chain reaction and to stop the lightning.
Is that theory the widely accepted theory at this point, or is that still a fairly
it's one of the main, Gurevich and Zybin's runaway breakdown.
Do you think that there's a plausible scenario for being able to control lightning on that level?
I think it's worth looking at because, as I mentioned, lightning uses this gain mechanism. It doesn't have enough field to generate lightning to start, but this relativistic electron avalanche has a net gain. And usually something like that has gain, it's pretty easy to wreck it. And all you have to do is wreck it, to wreck its gain, to stop the chain reaction and to stop the lightning.
Is that theory the widely accepted theory at this point, or is that still a fairly
it's one of the main, Gurevich and Zybin's runaway breakdown is one of the main contenders. However, it doesn't explain a few things. Apparently, it doesn't have quite enough gain to actually start a real lightning strike, which is anywhere from 30,000 to 120,000 amps. However, Dwyer came up with a really novel mechanism where the gamma rays facing downwards can produce positron-electron pairs, just like in the NASA video, but heading downwards. And if you make a positron in that electric field, it heads back upstream because it's positively charged. And his theory is it can make it upstream far enough to where it eventually does hit something and annihilates. It'll produce more relativistic electrons upstream again, and it forms kind of this positronic feedback loop that could greatly increase the current in the avalanche. And that was the point where I said, no, I can't believe positrons.